How do you blot out the biggest stain on the pontificate of Pope Francis, especially when this stain is now spreading and threatening to tarnish the entire synodal process the Pope has so painstakingly orchestrated? Our Rome correspondent, Dr. Jules Gomes, has the latest developments on the biggest scandal of Francis's pontificate and how it is looming over the Synod on synodality. Jules, we're talking about Father Marko Rupnik, the predator priest and celebrity artist who is accused of sexually abusing at least 25 nuns. The Jesuits kicked him out of the Society of Jesus. The world heaved a sigh of relief. But this sordid saga isn't over, is it?
No, Rodney, because Father Marko Rupnik has been rehabilitated and given a new lease of life. Now, just as the Synod was coming to an end, we reported on how Bishop Jules Gomes of the Diocese of Koper in Slovenia had incardinated him, welcomed him, virtually rolling out the red carpet and defending his incardination. Bishop said that he had the permission of Pope Francis's ambassador, papal nuncio Archbishop Jean-Marie Speech, and that left, everyone shell-shocked.
Yeah, this is shocking because a man who, had to leave, was forced out of the Jesuits, and forced out of his, high positions, is now given, basically refuge in a diocese. It's very maddening, and it's heartbreaking, really, to see that happening in the church. So all hell broke loose, forcing Pope Francis basically to reverse course on his friend Rupnik, right? But why was the Pope protecting the serial abuser in the first place?
Now that's the million-dollar question, Rodney. We were told that Rupnik was excommunicated by the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith for absolving a sexual accomplice in a confession, but then rehabilitated within a month by direct orders of the Apostolic See. But because there was a tidal wave of stinging criticism against Pope Francis on the last couple of days of the Synod, Francis suddenly did a U-turn, and the press office informed us that he was now going to lift the statute of limitations and allow the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith to reopen the Rupnik case. Also, the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors intervened and said that they wanted to interview the victims. Sex abuse survivor groups had been asking why Pope Francis took so long, decades virtually, to waive a statute of limitations to permit the possible prosecution of Father Marko Rupnik. Irish abuse survivor Marie Collins recently spoke, and she said victims need justice, not talk. And she herself is a former member of the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors who resigned in protest in 2017.
Yeah, so it seems like, excuse me, with all the talk from the Vatican now that they're making attempts at seeking justice, do you think that's actually going to happen? Are these victims actually assured that they'll finally get justice? Really, it's been 30 years of degrading abuse and really being ignored by the hierarchy that gross threesome, pornography, forcing them to drink gross stuff out of a chalice, things that, I think if anybody else had done it, they'd totally be gone. Is justice going to happen here?
Rodney, this is now the biggest twist in the story. First of all, the victims had actually refused to meet the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors. Why? because they have been told that their case will only be reviewed for how they were treated, and nothing will be done to give them justice or to bring Father Rupnik to book. Second, and this is the most startling of all in the saga, a number of nuns have now shed their anonymity in the last couple of days. Shared their testimonies. Previously, we reported on both under pen names. One was Gloria Brantani, and the other was Mirjam Kovac. Now, Vida Bernard, Mira Star, and a nun who still belongs to the community, Josica Zupančić, have all come out. In fact, these first four had already written an open letter to Pope Francis in September, in which they said that they were deeply offended by the final report. Remember, recently, the Diocese of Rome had conducted this report by going to the Aletti Center, co-founded by Rupnik, and basically the report rehabilitated Rupnik along with his collaborator, Maria Campatelli. Gloria Brantani, by the way, is Anna, who was forced by Rupnik into a threesome with another nun. And she wrote an open letter to the Superior General of the Jesuits, Father Arturo Souza, and she copied this. We reported extensively on it. She copied this to about 18 other very senior Jesuits, cardinals, bishops, provincial superiors, and even laymen. And this nun described how Rupnik abused her using scripture. You know, he took the figure of wisdom in the book of Proverbs to engage in what she called extreme erotic games while she was painting, or after Rupnik had celebrated the Eucharist, or even after confession.
So it seems, it's not necessarily the intention of the Pope or the Vatican in this whole process to actually render justice onto Rupnik, but just to say, well, we're listening to you victims. Clearly these victims are calling for justice, but they're saying, we're listening. That sounds quite silly. Is that what's happening?
Well, interestingly, the bishop who welcomed Rupnik in his Slovenian diocese had earlier signed a statement with other bishops condemning him. And now the Slovenian Bishops' Conference is distancing itself from the Koper Diocese's decision to admit Rupnik as one of the diocese's clergy. The chairman of the Bishops' Conference of Slovenia has just announced that the Bishops' Conference was not involved in the process of Rupnik's incardination. And that is where we are. You know, it's all about listening, but nothing is being done.
So we mentioned earlier here, and I think you've said it several times too in previous episodes, that this Rupnik scandal is the biggest scandal of Pope Francis's pontificate. In fact, you mention it as being a stain, an indelible stain even. Are you merely being hyperbolic when you say this, or is this true?
I'm not being hyperbolic at all. You know, there is not the slightest bit of exaggeration in what we've been calling the biggest and the virtually indelible stain on the Francis pontificate. And the reason, and there are a number of reasons for this. First of all, Rupnik is extremely well connected. Pope Francis, he's been a close friend of Pope Francis. They are Jesuits. Both of them have been Jesuits, therefore a brother Jesuit as well. But Rupnik has been networked into cardinals and bishops at the highest level in the Vatican. Moreover, Pope Francis has repeatedly ducked, the Vatican press office as well, has repeatedly ducked direct questions about who was responsible for lifting the excommunication on Rupnik. the blogs that broke this story, the Italian blogs, pointed the finger at Pope Francis directly, and my sources on the ground here tell me that could very well be the case, because canonically, only the Apostolic See can actually lift this excommunication. Moreover, the whole whitewash of Rupnik's scandal, when he's committed such egregious abuses, when letters have been written personally to Pope Francis, when, the Italian media in particular and the world media in general been reporting repeatedly on various aspects of this scandal, and nothing has been done. And when Pope Francis has taken action for much smaller crimes against other priests in other parts of the world, they have been laid aside immediately. For example, the bishop of a Polish diocese, who was 59, and there was a gay orgy in his diocese. Now, the bishop was innocent totally. He had made no attempt to cover this up, but he resigned his position, and Pope Francis immediately accepted that resignation. So if all this has happened, why has Pope Francis remained almost tacitly complicit in this whole case? Moreover, Rupnik is very closely linked with getting astronomical sums of money for commissions that he's done in the Vatican, in various seminaries and churches in Rome, and of course in major cathedrals all over the world. And therefore, he's somebody who is a very big celebrity in the Catholic Church. And these are some of the reasons why Pope Francis' pontificate will be stained, and historians will record this as one of the biggest scandals of the Francis pontificate.
I see. Well, it's easy to look on this whole situation and wonder who's actually in charge of the church. But we do have to remember that Christ is in charge, and our only refuge in these confusing times is Christ himself through his church. So let's all remember to pray for Pope Francis, for Rupnik's victims, and for even Rupnik himself. Jules, thank you for laying this all out for us.
Thank you, Rodney.
Thanks again for watching today's episode of Rome Dispatch. This show is brought to you by donors like Real Estate for Life. If you're looking to buy or sell a home and want to support our mission, visit realestateforlife.org. Again, that's realestateforlife.org. Be sure to tell them Church Militant sent you. God bless.